Shana Tova. Welcome back. Welcome for the first time. Gemar Chatima Tova. May you be inscribed and sealed for health and for life. All the good Yom Kippur salutations. Welcome. So we're about to go into Kol Nidrei, which is a prayer that many legal authorities over the ages have tried to excise from the Yom Kippur liturgy because they thought it doesn't really make sense. As you're going to see, what we're doing is relinquishing and nullifying vows that we have made in the past and proactively nullifying vows we make in the future. And so if we do this, then our words mean nothing, these legal authorities would posit. And they did not succeed. They did not win this battle of Kol Nidrei and services. As you can tell, we're about to do it. But there's something deeper at work here. More than just the nice tune that everybody loves, the haunting melody that you'll hear in a moment. So I want to go into context for just a second to give us a little bit of a basis for what we're about to do and why. Kol Nidrei is shrouded in mystery. Scholars think that it was composed in the 6th century in Spain when King Ricard I adopted Catholicism for himself and then ordered everyone, including Jews, to adopt it on pain of death. And that Kol Nidrei was composed in that time, but then repeated again and again throughout the ages, including during the Spanish Inquisition, 1492, when again, Jews found themselves professing loyalty with their words, making oaths and vows of loyalty to the king and to the Catholic Church, while knowing that in their hearts at the very same time, they were going to be teaching their children Torah in their homes and lighting Shabbat candles secretly. So Kol Nidrei is this cry of pain, of having to compromise your integrity for the sake of your survival. Kol Nidrei is about compromising our integrity for the sake of our survival. It's the sound of the soul in anguish, says Rabbi Alan Liu, being inescapably torn between impossible options that force us into a corner and allow us to come out with our life, but not with the fullness of who we are or who we want to be. And we spend so much time throughout our day and throughout the year being defensive of the ways in which we have to make compromises and we inevitably fall short. We deny accountability all the time. Kol Nidrei is the night of admitting broken promises to ourselves, to our families, to our ideals, to God, to each other. Tonight, we begin by envisioning a yeshiva shel mala, a divine court, God's court, and a yeshiva shel mata, an earthly court, to mirror the divine court. And we give each other permission, anu matirin, we give ourselves permission to bring our brokenness and our compromises into the room and to recognize that all of us come with compromises and brokenness. And we recognize that in God's eyes, we are whole. We are not broken. We are whole. We are loved. We are worthy of love, of forgiveness. We all matter, flaws and all. Losing Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg, just last week, right before Rosh Hashanah, felt like more than losing a Jewish superhero. Like that would be hard enough. She spoke for American justice that reminds me of what God's justice, the yeshiva shel mala, looks like. A divine court that is manifest through our laws and our justice system here on earth that sees human beings as human beings created in the divine image, radically equal, deserving of equal treatment under the law, deserving of changing the law if it's not supporting equality and dignity for all people. When we think about the human being being created in God's image, laws are what are supposed to protect and uphold this vision. When our earthly courts don't reflect the radical equality, the radical matteringness that we affirm for one another despite all of our flaws, we are further reminded of how far we are from the yeshiva shel mala here on earth. No one's being held accountable for the murder of Breonna Taylor. If this was your family member who was shot in their own home in the middle of the night by police, you would want someone to be held accountable. And while it wouldn't bring them back, it would create the feeling of earthly justice being served, affirming that her life mattered. Tonight, as we stand here admitting to our own compromises and broken promises, we also hold in the room with us is the broken promise of the American justice system and American democracy. And before you rush to say, well, it's more complicated than that, and Rabbi, don't overreact, democracy is not really broken, let's just remember what brought us all here tonight. What brings us here tonight is our tradition's insistence that our brokenness and our flaws and our shortcomings and our compromises need not define us or confine us in the year to come. They need not be a stain on us for the rest of our lives, but we can acknowledge them and then we can grow and become better when we do. What brings us here is the willingness to bravely acknowledge, not to defend our rightness, but to admit our wrongness and our association with wrongness that we might be embarrassed by and ashamed of and will protest and are implicated in nonetheless. And we can hold all of that. We can hold all of that. And so here we are tonight, and we come in pain and in disbelief and in grief and in a sense of this uphill battle for a country that we know is possible, and for selves and families that we believe are possible. And I am tired, and I know you are tired and lonely and frustrated and trying to homeschool children at the same time as work and do laundry and dishes and sweep the floor and get outside while it's still nice and exercise and find time to date. We are negotiating and making compromises all the time. And Kol Nidrei lets us just be here with all of it, all that compromise, all that brokenness, all of that disappointment from ourselves and from others, and just let us sit with it, not need to fix it in this moment, but just be. I invite you to take a breath to just be with all of that. And know that in God's eyes and in this yeshiva shel mala, we are whole. You can still breathe. You are whole. You are forgiven. So you can put up a hand, introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Lizzie. I'm one of the Avaryonim. I'm someone who missed the mark. I'm a sinner, like all of us tonight. And so we come here, along with the millions upon millions of Jews over time and space who have missed the mark and who know what it means to compromise their sense of self and are implicated in larger systems that don't reflect the best of God or reflect the best of us. And we will nonetheless stand up in a moment with resilience and with commitment to working harder in the year to come to be the people that we need to be to make the country we need it to be. And we believe that it can be. Gemar Chatima Tova, may you be inscribed and sealed in the book of life and growth and integrity in this year to come. Amen.
Bishiva shel mala uvishiva shel mata al da'at hamakom ve'al da'at hakahal anu matirin להתפלל עם העבריינים. Kol Nidrei V'yesarei V'charamei V'konamei V'chinuyei V'kinusei Ushavut Din Darna Udesh Tabana Ude Acharimna Bediasana al nafshatana Miyom Kippurim ze ad Yom Kippurim haba aleinu le'tova kulahon icharatna vehon kulahon yehon sharan Shavikin Shaviti בטלים ומבוטלים, לשרירים ולקיימים. נדרנה לנדרי, וסרנה לאסרי. ושבועתנה לשבועות. קול נדרי ושרי וחרמי וקונמי וכינויי וכינוסי ושבועות תידרנה ודאישתבנה ודאחרינה. odiasana al nafshatana miyom kippurim ze ad yom kippurim haba aleinu letzloah kulehon icharatna vehon kulehon yehon sharan shvikin shvitzin batelin umevutalin לשרירים ולקיימים. נדרנה לנדרי ואסרנה לאסרי. ושבועתנה לשבועות. ונסלח לכל עדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה. סלח נא לעוון העם הזה כגודל חסדך, וכאשר נשאת לעם הזה ממצרים ויד הנה, ושם נאמר ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך. ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך. ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu
Hi, join us. Hi, 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 את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך, לעולם ועד. We can take a seat and can daven in English or in Hebrew as is comfortable for you, as we meditate on the changing seasons and the changing light in every single day. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidbaro ma'ariv arim b'chokmah
You open the gates of heaven at the right times. You have established all the cycles wisely, days and nights, seasons and constellations, all progressing through the heavens.
Uma'avir yom, umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo, el chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed. Hay, 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 Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadata. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbeinu v'komeinu nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei tiratecha u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu, le'orech yameinu, ובהם נגי יומם ולילה, ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים. היי, 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 היי,
Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai, Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Le'olam va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol yadecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shintam lenecha ודיברתם בם, בשיטתך ביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך בגומך, ושתם להולות על ידיך, והיו תותפות בין עיניך, ותתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך.
Hey, to my Mishkan family, this is Pastor Jonathan Brooks of the Canaan Community Church here in Chicago on the south side in the Inglewood neighborhood. I'm so excited to be able to introduce this prayer for you today and give you some tangible examples of what healing actually looks like. We pray for healing as the people of God because we believe that God is a healer. First and foremost, we believe that God is a healer of individuals, individual hearts, individual minds, and individual bodies. But God is also a corporate healer, a healer who is healing cities, who's healing systems, who's healing structures. And what we do when we pray is we pray that God not only heals individual hurts, not only that God heals individual issues, but that God will cover us communally and that we would be focused on communal flourishing, communal and joy, and communal peace. I can remember one year during the week prior to Easter, the Christian holiday is a high holy week for us. We decided to take that entire week and do a 24/7 prayer at our church, Canaan. And the reason we decided to do that was because that is the week of spring break for Chicago Public Schools. And for the 2 years prior to this, it had been one of the most violent weeks that we'd seen in our city as kids were out of school, as people were struggling and parents were struggling to make sure that they were safe. And so what we decided to do was to pray that God would do a miracle that week, that he would heal our communities. We opened up our church as a place where people could come and pray 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the prayers were not just get on your knees and pray, but they were prayer stations where people could draw, they could color, they could paint, they could do big posters and put them on the walls, they could mold things with clay or Play-Doh, they could listen to music, they could read books, but the building was just open. And what we were praying was for God to make the sun stand still over our neighborhood, the way that it happened in the battle that Joshua had, where he asked for God to make the sun stand still right in the sky so that they would have more time to finish the battle. God, we needed you to do a miracle and to heal our community. And what happened is that week, the first time in over 5 years, there were absolutely no shootings and no violence that happened in the city that year. And I remember my church saying, when we started this journey, we didn't know whether this was really feasible or a logical ask for God. But what I reminded them is that God is a God of peace. God is a God of joy. God is a comforter. And most of all, God is a healer. And not only will he heal you as an individual, but he's healing whole communities. And so pray as the people of God, that God will heal us individually. God will heal our families. God will heal our communities. God will heal our city. God will heal our country. And God will heal our world. God is a healer. And we as a people of God pray for healing because we believe God is a healer. Mishkan, be the people of God. Don't just pray with your lips, but pray with your feet. May your actions follow your verbal prayers. Peace be unto you.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim L'chaim Ufros aleinu Sukkot Shalomecha Shalomcha.
Join us.
Hashkiveinu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'ha'amideinu shomreinu l'chaim ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha. Hashkiveinu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'ha'amideinu shomreinu l'chaim
Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'al Yerushalayim.
Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai tiftach. Na 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 ufi agid. Ufi agid tehilatecha.
Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai tiftach. Na 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 ufi agid. Ufi agid tehilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai
There's a Shel Silverstein poem that I love. It goes, "If there were hinges on our heads, there wouldn't be no sin, because we could take the bad stuff out and leave the good stuff in." Now, we don't have real hinges on our heads, but we do have Yom Kippur to do this kind of mental housekeeping. Our job over the next 25 hours is to go through our actions from the past year, recognizing and acknowledging the good and the bad. We're about to recite our first confessional of Yom Kippur, our first little peek into the attic of our minds. Of course, there shouldn't be any surprises. We've been living with ourselves all year. Yet somehow every year, when I start to go through the list of ways that I might have fallen short, I find myself surprised by the memories that it recalls, of conversations where I was snarky, bordering on just mean, of moments when I knew someone needed my compassion but I didn't make time to give it, of purchases I made that were decided by convenience rather than ethics. And then, as I remember all of the things I did this year that I wish I could erase, I start to feel overwhelmed. How has everyone tolerated me all year? How am I supposed to face myself all day tomorrow, hungry and desperate and just embarrassed by myself? And then I remember the opening lines of Kol Nidrei. Anu matirin lehitpalel im ha'avaryanim. We permit ourselves to pray, to do genuine self-reflection with other people who've also fallen a little short. I hear the sounds of the community chanting the confessional together, in the plural, and I know that I'm not alone. Sure, I might not have done every single one of these things in this long list of confessions, but I've certainly done some of them, and someone else might have done others. So if I get the grace to say these things in the presence of other people who also say them with me, so that I don't have to feel singled out or ashamed of my own imperfections, of course I'm going to say them all, so that no one has to feel ashamed or alone. So see if you can make gratitude your kavanah, your intention for this first confession. Gratitude that we were each basically just given a magic head hinge that'll allow us to clear out the bad. And gratitude that we have a framework that allows us to do it, to be genuine and supported in this work, and to know that we're not doing it alone.
Ki anu amecha ve'ata Eloheinu anu vanecha ve'ata avinu anu avadecha ve'ata Adoneinu anu kahalecha ve'ata chelkeinu anu nachaltecha ve'ata goraleinu anu tzomecha ve'ata roeinu anu karmecha ve'ata nodreinu anu tegulatecha ve'ata yotzreinu anu rayatecha ve'ata dodeinu anu tegulatecha ve'ata keroveinu anu amecha ve'ata malkeinu anu ma'amirecha ve'ata ma'amireinu Hanu azeh fanim, ואתה רחום וחנון. אנו קשה עורף, ואתה ערך אפיים. אנו מלא עוון, אתה מלא רחמים. אנו ימינו כצל עובר, ואתה הוא שנותינו, שנותיך לא יתמו. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, תבוא לפניך תפילתנו. אל תתעלם מתחינתנו, שאין אנחנו הזייפנים וקשי עורף לומר לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו, אבל אנחנו חטאנו. היי 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 אשמנו בגדנו גזלנו דיברנו דופי היי 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 הבינו והרשנו זדנו חמסנו טפלנו שקר היי 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 יצנו רע כיזבנו לצנו מרדנו ניאצנו הבינו פשענו שררנו קישינו עורף היי 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 רשענו שיחתנו תיעבנו טעינו תיתנו היי 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 סרנו ממצוותיך ומשפטיך טובים ולא שבה לנו ואתה צדיק על כל הבא עלינו כי אמת עשית ואנחנו הרשענו. What are we, of what significance our lives, of what value our small kindnesses and good deeds? What can we change? What power can we draw on? What can we accomplish? מה נאמר לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו? הלא כל הגיבורים כאין לפניך? What can we say to you in our defense, our God and God of our ancestors? The strongest are puny in relation to you. The famous are forgotten, the learned ignorant, the wise foolish. Most of our deeds are insignificant, and in the big picture, the days of our lives float like a passing cloud. Umotar ha'adam mina behema ayin ki hakol havel. On this day, when we come face to face with the reality that the difference between human beings and animals is negligible, all of us, a passing shadow, a cloud in the wind. And yet, your essence is forgiveness. We go into our first al-Chet, which is on page 65. and I'm going to read them in Hebrew, and then we'll go to the English for each one. So it will sound like this, recognizing you might not have personally done all of these things, or maybe even half of these things, but to the extent that we all are in relationship with one another and are responsible for one another, we all bear some of this responsibility. And we take it upon ourselves to make the world a place where there's less of all of this stuff. So we take our hand again and put it over our heart with a little strike for each one of these things that hopefully in the coming year we will do better. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באונס וברצון, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב. For the sin that we have sinned before you under compulsion and willingly, for the sin that we have sinned before you by lacking compassion. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בבלי דעת, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בביטוי שפתיים. For the sin that we have sinned before you without being aware of what we were doing wrong. For the sin that we have sinned before you with inappropriate speech. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגילוי עריות. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגילוי ובסתר. For the sin that we have sinned before you by improper sexual practices. For the sin that we have sinned before you in public actions and privately. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בדעת ובמרמה. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בדיבור הפה. For the sin that we have sinned before you knowingly and deceptively. For the sin that we have sinned before you with offensive speech. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהונאת רע. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהרהור הלב. For the sin that we have sinned before you by wronging other people. For the sin that we have sinned before you by negative thinking. Altogether, ve'al kulam Eloah selichot selach lanu mechalanu kaper lanu ve'al kulam Eloah selichot selach lanu mechalanu selach lanu mechalanu kaper lanu. And if you have a traditional machzor, you'll notice that there are 66 of these statements of things that you might have done wrong. Acquiescing in immorality. Oh, expressing empty confessions. That's a good one. It's a good one for this holiday. Speaking foolishly. You've probably all done that this year. I just want to encourage you to spend a little bit of time, maybe during the davening or in a break from the davening, to look over these and ask yourself which of these belong to you and what you want to do about it.
Want to go first?
No, go ahead.
You should go first. You're way more Jewish than I am.
But you're more recently Jewish, and I think you have a fresher perspective.
Okay, you know what? You've been Jewish longer than I have. Just go.
Fine. Well, I had been shul shopping in Chicago since 1997 when I moved here fresh out of college. Mostly I was looking for somewhere to celebrate the high holidays when I couldn't make it to Ohio to be with my family. In the ensuing decade, I shul hopped around Chicago. I went to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services each year because it's what Jews do, but it was never really spiritually fulfilling. In fall of 2012, my sister's friend recommended a new synagogue she had heard about. My sister and I schlepped my 2-year-old twins to Mishkan's very first high holiday services, and we were blown away. I cried, which I had never been moved to do at shul, and I continue to cry at almost every Mishkan service. I continued to attend Mishkan for the high holidays and would occasionally attend a Saturday morning family service with the Munchkins or a Friday night Shabbat service by myself. Every time I went, I wondered if the magic would fade, but every time I went, I felt alive, emotional, invigorated, and I felt so Jewish. Before Mishkan, I went to synagogue when I was obligated to go, and over the years at Mishkan, I find myself looking forward to going to shul.
All that time, I thought you were having an affair.
I was time for that.
Courtney and I have actually been married for 14 years.
Actually, 15 years.
15 years. And until about 2 years ago, I had never even been in a synagogue. My prior experiences with organized religion had not been what one would call fulfilling. I've certainly never felt like I belonged anywhere. And Courtney never had pressured me to go to services or convert. But being a parent started to give me a new awareness of what lies ahead for my children as Jews, especially after a shocking election. And then there was a bomb threat at their school, their Jewish day school. And then in late October 2018, there was the mass shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue. That was kind of a turning point for me. And for the first time, I felt compelled to go to services. So I asked Courtney to take me. And we went. We attended the services. It was beautiful. It was everything that she'd been telling me it was for the last 8 years. And I wept, and it resonated with me for quite some time. Unfortunately, 5-6 months later, there was another shooting. And again, I felt compelled to go to services. Again, it was beautiful, and I wept, and I felt connected to something bigger. So, much to our children's chagrin, we found ourselves at services almost every week. I even went alone a few times, went to high holidays by myself. And then of June this year, I called my mother-in-law and proclaimed that I had made her dreams come true. For I had just finished meeting with the Beit Din, and her daughter was now officially married to a nice Jewish girl. So now we attend services every Friday in our living room. I often participate in morning minyan, get my daily grounding. And our kids have bar and bat mitzvah dates 3 years from now. What I love about Mishkan is that I am constantly being challenged to be a better version of myself. They're not afraid to talk about the hard issues. They protest during a pandemic. And that you are welcome no matter who you are. And I think it's pretty cool that a couple of grumpy old introverts like ourselves can find a place in this beautiful, eclectic Mishkan home.
And now it is something that we do as a family. Shana Tova, everyone.
Thank you.
That's so moving, Chris and Courtney. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being inspirations. It's so powerful to hear personal stories like yours. And I know there are actually hundreds of people who share similar stories of inspiration and growth at Mishkan. And I invite you guys to share them in the chat if you haven't already. We're going to zoom out from your story and from our individual stories to see sort of a bigger composite of where Mishkan's been, where we're going, and then to talk about one really meaningful way that you can be part of that in the year to come. So check this out. When we first began, we called ourselves Mishkan because we knew that it wasn't going to be our physical space that defined us. It would be something different. It would be the energy of a group of people from diverse backgrounds and identities and ages, laughing and reflecting and studying together, sharing Shabbat dinner together, doing justice work, challenging one another, raising up their voices in harmony, connecting with a Judaism in a way that feels at once ancient and modern and progressive. Mishkan would be defined by people who brought their whole selves to something larger than ourselves, breathing new life into Judaism and aspiring to change the world. And so, as we grew, we called our members builders because that felt like the most honest way to convey what we're trying to do here. Like the Torah describes about the ancient Mishkan, God's presence is most palpable and present when we create together. Our actions, our words, our differences combined and enabled us to build a kind of Jewish space that doesn't exist anywhere else, appealing to people across the spectrum of belief and background, many of whom had given up on finding home in the Jewish community. We were built on the sense that inspired, down-to-earth Judaism can bring people together and comes in many forms. So when we had to go remote last spring, we had something profound to call on. We had our origin story, that sacred teaching from thousands of years ago, the wisdom from generations before us who, in the face of so much wandering and pain and loss, taught us that we are more agile and flexible, able to survive the test of time and challenge when we get creative, get curious, and bring the best of ourselves to the task, no matter where we are. Our staff pivoted quickly to adapt to our new landscape. We started Friday night Shabbat services over Facebook Live and the daily morning minyan to connect and reflect at the start of each day. And we connected with thousands of people around the country by the end of each weekend. But the days grew long, as did our time apart. So we turned toward one another even more. Together, we created more than 250 programs from March to August, attracting thousands of regular participants around the world. We established our signature Lunch and Learns led by our talented and dedicated builders. We produced a podcast that already has 400 consistent listeners. We released a track from our davening team recorded at a distance, and we created an immersive high holiday experience. The truth is, we've never done more programs than in pandemic, and your support and participation in all of this has been nothing short of inspiring. We've learned again what we always knew. Even though it's hard, even though we are so far away from one another, and even though we are exiled from the lives that we loved, as a community, we were built for this. Will you keep building with us?
It's really hard to watch. It's poignant. Watching high holidays of years past and seeing us falling all over each other, singing together, dancing together. May we get back there soon. May we get back there soon. Well, you know that the high holidays are about tefillah and tshuva and tzedakah. And tefillah and tshuva, prayer, introspection, and behavior adjusting and change and growth. That is what we spend most of the high holidays thinking about and talking about, and most of the year thinking about and talking about in our classes, in our workshops, in our services, in our learning and community building. That's where we spend most of our time. Tzedakah is what makes it possible. And I know many of you give to many, many causes. Tonight is when I have to ask, if this matters to you, if this kind of Jewish experience matters to you, if Mishkan existing in the world means something to you, then help us build it. Help us build it. In this moment, I know this is a little unorthodox, but you know what? Everything about Judaism right now is a little unorthodox. I want to invite you to take out your phone and do something holy with it. Yes, this rabbi just asked you to take out your phone on the high holidays during services. You will text "built for this," all one word, to the number on your screen. And you'll see as our collective impact reflected in that little thermometer goes up and up and up. It will be fast and painless. Actually, you know what? It can be a little bit painful. Like push yourself to give something that feels like a little bit of a stretch, but you will feel the satisfaction in knowing for the rest of Yom Kippur that you have done at least one of the 3 critical steps toward living an impactful life. That is what those big 3 are about. For all of the people who are just dipping their toe in or just discovering this, so the way has been paved by people before you. And I just want to say to everybody here,
we're interested in 100% of people here giving a little something. And if you can do that, you will make inspired, down-to-earth Judaism possible, not just for yourself, but for so many people in the year to come. Thank you. Since Congressman John Lewis died, and images and footage, movies, testimony about his life and especially his activism during the civil rights era has been more in the air, there has been one particular story that he shares that keeps coming back to me. So while thousands upon thousands of young Black activists were training in the principles of nonviolence, doing such daring things as sitting down to lunch in a public place or walking down the street peacefully. And they were met with mobs of angry white people, some police, some civilians, with billy clubs and water cannons. And these students allowed themselves to be brutalized, not raising a hand to fight back. And while that is extraordinary in and of itself as a strategy for dramatizing and making visible the violence of racism, the part that I found myself most moved by is how he contextualized and experienced this physical suffering through the lens of love. So he writes in Walking with the Wind, his memoir, when faced with a hateful, angry, even aggressive or despicable person, you might imagine that person actually visualize him or her as an infant, as a baby. If you can see this full-grown attacker who faces you as the pure, innocent child that he or she once was, it's not hard to find compassion in your heart. It is not hard to find forgiveness. This sense of love, this sense of peace, this capacity for compassion is something you carry inside of yourself every waking minute of every day. We come to this night, Erev Yom Kippur, wanting and needing to atone for not carrying this sense of love, this sense of peace, this sense of compassion inside of ourselves at every waking minute of every day. To say that we haven't carried inside of us love and peace and compassion, especially during these last 7 months, is a dramatic understatement. Think for a second about how quickly you fly off the handle at somebody you live with who you actually do love just because you're a little tired or hungry or had a bad day. Many of us have a hard time not shaking our fist or yelling when we see somebody on the street, maybe without a mask, or texting at a red light, even though you just did the same thing 2 minutes ago. Or maybe they're wearing a particular genre of red hat that really gets under your skin. Or maybe they're wearing the wrong sports jersey or hat, and it just makes you crazy. This is something that my family deals with regularly as my husband wears his Sox hat in Cubs territory. How far most of us are from being the kind of loving, compassionate people, having that loving, compassionate heart awake within us at all moments of the day, giving the benefit of the doubt for people, including malicious, inconsiderate jerks. How far we are from the kind of practice that Lewis describes. Mary Elizabeth King, who was the director of communications for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, at the time when Lewis was the 23-year-old chair, she called this ability to channel love and forgiveness and compassion, even in the midst of being brutalized. She called that tenacious self-restraint. Practicing love requires tenacious self-restraint, self-discipline, rigor, even sacrifice. And that's what brings us to what we are doing here tonight on Yom Kippur and for the next 24 hours. We are here to practice tenacious self-restraint for a higher purpose in community. And to the extent that we put ourselves in harm's way tonight, we do so voluntarily and with time-tested spiritual practices that will hopefully help us build these muscles. Now, I spoke on Rosh Hashanah about the spiritual technology of Yom Kippur, how these practices of abstention, removing food and drink, sexual intimacy, lotions, perfume, nice clothes, leather, even idle chatter and doing business, how clearing that away clears the space for unmediated reflection and conversation with our friends, our family, within ourselves, with God, about why we do what we do and how we can do better. And so my mom said to me after hearing last week's sermon, she said, I really like that framing, Lizzie. I always thought of fasting as a kind of punishment for the things that we did wrong, and this framing is so much more positive. So I'm glad that struck you that way, Mom. And it's true. It is partially true. But it's not the whole truth, because part of the experience today is, in fact, about self-restraint, self-denial. Our spiritual practices are not about punishment, but they are about atonement, purification, which requires sacrifice. In ancient times, the high priest would effect this atonement with actual sacrifices on behalf of the people, literally sacrificing a goat. Today, the physical deprivation of Yom Kippur allows us to practice the kind of self-restraint required to overcome our baser instincts, the ones that lead us down the road of saying and doing things that we regret, whether in the realm of eating and drinking or romance, or within our families, our professional lives, in our community, or in politics and doing justice work. We can hurt people in so many places and ways. The Torah in Leviticus says, in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, which is to say, today, you will afflict your souls. Ta'anu et nafshotechem. Ta'anu, affliction, the Talmud teaches, means hunger, thirst, not feeling like your normal, daily, beautiful, well-coiffed, and well-made-up self. Many people on Yom Kippur will abstain from brushing their teeth, right? Because it's sort of like food and drink, putting something in your mouth. And if that's not affliction for you, it's definitely affliction for the people you live with. We abstain from all of these feel-good necessities and indulgences, yes, of course, because it clears space for us to focus, but we also do it because it hurts and it challenges us in our all-encompassing desire to be comfortable. So parenthetically, let me say here, if any of these practices on Yom Kippur, especially fasting, constitute actual physical danger to your health or your life, you should not do them, right? In that case, not practicing these kinds of self-denial practices is as powerful as doing them. On the mitzvah ladder, pikuach nefesh, preserving human life, it's way up there, way up there. So these practices are designed to afflict us safely. If you can't do it safely, don't do it. Okay, now I made the mistake of checking Google Translate for a translation of ta'anu et nafshotechem. It translates ta'anu as torture. You shall torture yourself. And while that may seem a little extreme, by Yom Kippur afternoon, not eating and drinking for a day can feel a little bit like torture. Which makes you go, again, like, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I practicing this self-inflicted torture, this denial? Why deprive yourself? It's a holiday, and actually a joyful holiday at that, because this holiday clears the way for so much transformation that's possible. Why, on a holiday, would we deprive ourselves of delicious things that make you feel good? Isn't the world hard enough right now with everything going on outside of our homes, let alone the things going on inside of our homes as well? Why do we need to make things even harder and more uncomfortable, even if just for a day? So Lewis writes in his chapter called Soul Force, suffering can be nothing more than a sad and sorry thing without presence on the part of the sufferer of a graceful heart. And we're talking here about love, not romantic love, not the love of one individual for another, not loving something that is lovely to you, rather a broader, deeper, more all-encompassing love. All of our Jewish practices, and frankly, not just today, but on all Jewish holidays, every Jewish practice, Shabbat observance, keeping any degree of kosher, keeping Passover, amount to choices that restrict our natural instincts, that deny us the immediate satisfaction of the breadth of options. And we do these things for love. God for us is how we love, demonstrated through a million tiny moments throughout the day. As the Shema says, when we lie down to when we rise up, when we're at home and when we're on the road. We are motivated by love of God, which means love of the earth and love of our people and also all humanity created in God's image, love for ourselves, love for our families, love for our tradition, love for both the mutilated world as it is and love for the perfected world that we have faith is possible, and love as the only way to get there. The means, love, and the end, love, must be consistent. Rabbi Akiva, when asked, what's the most important commandment in the Torah? Maybe you've heard this one before. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your neighbor as yourself. Zeh klal gadol b'Torah. This is a major, overarching, fundamental principle of the Torah toward which everything else points. If whatever you're doing is not helping you love your neighbor more, you're doing it wrong. It's easy enough to say this, right? This is the golden rule. After all, it is what every religion teaches is the most important thing. So the proof is in the practice. How much of a sacrifice to our comfort is any one of us prepared for in the name of loving our neighbors? A traditional reading on Yom Kippur is Eila Ezkara. These I remember. It's the story of 10 martyrs, sages from ancient Israel, who were put to death by the Roman Empire for their commitment to Torah. And the text says, when Rabbi Akiva, same guy I just mentioned, when he was taken out to be executed, and it was time to say the Shema, as the executioners were combing his flesh with iron combs, he began lovingly to recite the Shema. And his students who were watching said, "Our teacher, even to this point?" Meaning, have you not lost your faith? Look at where it's brought you. And he said, "My whole life, I've been vexed by the verse, you should love God with all your soul, because I understood it as, even if he takes your soul, now that I have the opportunity to fulfill this precept, will I not fulfill?" And he prolonged the word echad until his dying breath. Now, I've used some extreme examples here tonight to draw our attention to the question of what we're prepared to flex this muscle of self-denial, of affliction, of sacrifice, what we are prepared to sacrifice for love or for our bigger why. This seems both important in the short term. I would love us to not fall into what Lewis called the sad and sorry thing, which is suffering with no higher end. But more importantly, I want us to embrace the opportunity tonight to practice tenacious self-restraint for a higher purpose. So to what or to whom do you want to dedicate your fast tonight? To what or to whom do you want to dedicate your fast tonight? What's the bigger why of your life or of a dimension of your life, such that you need to prepare your heart and mind for the rigors of self-sacrifice that may be necessary to pursue it? And then allow yourself to experience all of the hunger and the thirst. And if you choose not to brush your teeth, the stinky mouth and the simple clothes and the music and the knocking gently or maybe pounding on our chest, experience that as training for that bigger love. We all know how to do this. We all know how to make sacrifices for love. We do it every day. Think of the daily sacrifices you make for love. Every time you look out of the window and it's raining, and then you put on your boots and you walk your dog in the rain, that's love. Or stay up working with your kid on a science project. That is love. Or tending to them in the middle of the night when they're afraid of the dark. Or sit in traffic on the highway to go visit your parent in a retirement community, right? Spending time on the phone with a friend when you have other things to do, but they need you. We make sacrifices for love every day. Love is sacrifice. Shameless plug while we're talking about minor sacrifices we make for love. Mishkan's selling face masks right now with the word love, ve'ahavta, emblazoned on the fabric, right, with a little red palm. Nobody loves wearing masks. We make sacrifices for the greater good, for a higher purpose. We show love for the people around us. I have spoken with a number of you who have responded to calls from your childhood camp or your high school or alma mater or a theater company you love that needed to shore up cash in order not to close. And in a very short time frame, you and others took a big gulp and said, "Okay, I will help." You made a sacrifice for love that you might not have made had it not been so clear what the stakes were. This summer, after many of us had spent months understanding that the way to keep ourselves and other people safe from COVID was not to go out in public, and then assess the risk and put on masks and goggles and face shields and went out into the street to protest, saying, "Here's where I need to be." Not that you wanted to invite risk, but you considered the higher purpose and said, "I will take a calculated risk for this higher purpose." You did this as you went to grocery stores to go shopping for the elderly and the sick and homebound strangers even, and lovingly put food on their doorsteps. We know how to do this. In World War II, there was a national goal of winning the war. And so Americans rallied together behind the cause with a kind of single-minded focus. Factories that made lingerie started making camouflage netting. Companies that once made cars or refrigerators or sewing machines began producing military products, sort of like Koval Refinery over here started producing hand sanitizer. Everyday commodities like rubber and tin cans and aluminum foil and lumber were recycled specifically for the war effort. In 1940, 10% of Americans, 10%, paid federal income taxes. By 1944, that number was close to 100%. And the marginal tax rate on the wealthiest was 94%. Think about that as we're filling out our ballots here in Illinois for progressive income tax. Once it was 94% at the highest level. There was a national speed limit of 35 miles an hour to reduce rubber and gas consumption because farmers had reduced their numbers and they had less farming equipment to work with. Civilians, people like you and me, not farmers, planted micro gardens, victory gardens, growing their own food in their backyards and in empty lots. People regularly incurred blackouts as the nation tried to save electricity. 5 months after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, Americans were gathering around their radios and listening to President Roosevelt speak about the challenges ahead. And he said, "Not all of us can have the privilege of fighting our enemies in distant parts of the world or working in munitions factories or a shipyard needed by our armed forces. But there is one front and one battle where everyone in the United States, every man and woman and child, is in action and will be privileged to remain. And that front is right here at home, in our daily lives and in our daily tasks. Here at home, everyone will have the privilege of making whatever self-denial is necessary. This will require, of course," he said, "the abandonment not only of luxuries, but many creature comforts. As I told Congress yesterday," he said, "sacrifice is not exactly the proper word sacrifice is not exactly the proper word with which to describe this program of self-denial. When at the end of this great struggle, we shall have saved our free way of life, we shall have made no sacrifice." Now I know it sounds dramatic to think of this holiday as basic training for our bodies and our minds to sacrifice for a higher purpose. But you don't need training to make your lover breakfast or to clean up your child's or your cat's vomit in the middle of the night or to drive your partner of 3 decades to and from medical appointments. Those are sacrifices you make for love, and as gross as they might be or as bleary-eyed as you might be in the morning, those kinds of sacrifices are relatively easy. They don't require training. But the kind of rigorous self-restraint that John Lewis described, that Rabbi Akiva modeled, requires practice. The benefit of the doubt, the ability to call up within ourselves compassion, forgiveness, love in moments of extreme stress and pressure and fear, that requires practice. Yom Kippur is about self-affliction, such that each one of us might remember what it feels like in our bodies to be uncomfortable and to transcend that discomfort instead of being victimized by it, to activate that discomfort instead of being victimized by it, to use that discomfort as purification, as a kind of way of achieving that love and that compassion that we actually would not be able to access unless we touched a little bit of pain. As Lewis writes, suffering puts us and those around us in touch with our consciences. It opens us and touches our hearts. It makes us feel compassion where we need to and guilt if we must. We will be called to make sacrifices this year for COVID safety, for sure, for the election, perhaps, for whatever happens in the wake of the election. We will be called to make sacrifices for things we believe in and practicing tenacious self-restraint self-denial, maybe a little bit of voluntary self-affliction, sacrifices of time and money and comfort. And our practice today will actually help us be the vessels of love and of justice that we may want to be, but are kind of out of practice being. Queen Esther, before bravely approaching and speaking to King Ahasuerus in the Purim story, she asks her maids and the entire Jewish people to fast for her, to pray for her success. I want to ask all of us now to consider, what is our fast for tonight and tomorrow? What is it preparing our heart and our mind and our body for? What is the bigger love, the bigger why that will benefit from the sacrifice that you make of time or money or comfort this year? May our fast tonight bring us all in touch with our true strength, with our sense of connectedness to our tradition, to our power, to God, to each other, and may it bring us closer to the kind of big love that transforms the world. Gamar Chatima Tova. May you be inscribed and sealed for life.
Sometimes I'll be talking to someone I know who recently experienced a loss, and I'll think to myself, I wonder how they're doing. I wonder how they're coping. And then I'll think, no, I shouldn't bring it up right now. I don't want to remind them of that loss if it's not on their mind. But of course, as any of us who have ever lost anyone we love know, it's always with us. We might not be actively thinking about that person, but they're never not with us in some way. And so, when I can manage the courage, I ask that person, how are you doing after the loss of your mother, your friend, your partner? And every time I do, that person smiles. And I'm reminded of the Jewish phrase that we say when someone passes, Zichrono or Zichrana livracha. May their memory be a blessing. And when I see that smile on the other person's face, I feel the blessing of that person's life present with the two of us in that moment. I feel the ways that they have changed the life of everyone they know, including my own, because I have the opportunity to connect with another person over their memory. So as we say Mourner's Kaddish this evening, I'll invite you to share the names of anyone that you are remembering in the chat and to speak them out loud. to feel the blessing that comes from recalling their presence. Because while they may not be with us physically, they still allow us to connect with each other, to connect with our past, and to connect with our future, one in which we will carry all of the things they taught us, all of the ways that they helped us become who we are, and they'll give us an opportunity to continue to comfort and support each other in prayer, in community, and in life. So if you are remembering someone who you lost recently, or someone for whom you are saying Kaddish, please share their name in the chat, and then if you're able, rise and join us in reciting the Mourner's Kaddish, as we make all of those who are not with us today a blessing for each of our lives.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalma divrei chirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayachon uvyomechon u'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael b'agala uvizman kariv v'yimru.
Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam Lo Me'amaya.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shmei d'Pisha Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata v'miran v'alma v'imru. Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru.
Amen. Amen.
All right, we sing this at the end of Erev Kol Nidrei, Erev Yom Kippur, because we might be feeling a little bit fragile, tonight. Beginning of a fast, some introspection. If we're doing it right, we might not actually feel awesome the whole day, not just because of the fast, but because we may actually have the rare opportunity to let down our defenses and feel regret or feel sadness or feel the feeling of maybe even a little bit of guilt about something that we know we can do better about. And so with these feelings swirling around us, we just want to be held and embraced and wrapped in arms or in wings that protect and that care for and love us. And so we sing this lullaby invoking the angels, Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael, and the Spirit of God just surrounding us on our way. And I invite you to just hang out with these angels for the rest of tonight and for tomorrow, and maybe to take them with you as you leave the house. And to just remember that we're surrounded and protected by all of these angels. B'Shem Hashem Elohei Yisrael Miyamini Michael U'mismoli Gabriel U'milfanai Hashem, 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 Gmar Chatima Tova. May you be inscribed and sealed for life. See you in the morning.